One of the most interesting things about Mario Kart World is that the map in the game is bad. I mean, you guys think it's bad. I think it's awesome. The reason people think it's bad is because there's nothing really on it. General biomes are outlined, and the courses that you race on have icons, but aside from that, it's extremely vague. It's like a 17th century sailing map. But the reason I like this map is because it means that there's so much stuff in this game that you would never know was there unless you stumbled across it randomly. Mario Kart World is full of locations like this, as well as tons of other spots that you'd never actually see if you didn't stop to look for them, and those places are exactly the types of things I want to show you today. We're going to start on the western edge of the map and make our way east, snaking through wide swaths of the map to look at 15 unremarkable and odd places that I compiled over the last few weeks of playing the game. Everything from lonely ice roads way up in the sky, to pipe-themed interstate highways, to mountaintops only accessible by UFO. Just a bunch of spots that you were never meant to look at, but they are there for you to look at if you want to. Let's begin. The western edge of Mario Kart World looks a lot like the edge of a lot of video game maps. A kind of weird, isolated, empty patch of land looking out into an infinite ocean. But there's something extra lonely about it in this context. I think because Mario Kart World is such an artificial game, it feels a lot more like Disneyland than it does a real functioning society, so sneaking off into little secluded edges like this feels a little bit like hopping a fence at Six Flags. There are some pretty funny exceptions to this that we'll get into later, but for now, I just want you to keep this place in your head as we head onwards to our first real stop on the journey today, an industrial train depot. This general area is fascinating to me for a couple of reasons, but first, let me just show you some of the cool stuff that's here. Number one, look at this fire in a barrel. Mesmerizing. Number two, transmission towers shaped like Super Mario stars. Incredible. Number three, huge aqueduct that isn't even labeled on the map. And number five, my favorite thing here, a collapsed bridge. A collapsed bridge. Why is there deteriorating infrastructure in Mario Kart World? I thought this was a racing theme park. What's cool about this is that a bridge that has decayed to the point of collapse communicates something about this world. It communicates that things can't decay, which means this is a real physical place. And in a funny way, it communicates that Mario Kart World is real. It's not abstract. Whereas past Mario Kart games felt kind of abstract. Now, this is all kind of a silly game theory exercise, but it reminds me of how in Mario Odyssey, there was this part where you could go underground and you could see the infrastructure that powers New Donk City with all the power moons. Before you see that, New Donk City is living by pretty abstract rules, but after you see that, things start to feel a little more concrete. We'll leave the rest of the infrastructure analysis for another video, and we're going to stick to road tripping for this one, so let's go on to the next location. We're going to follow the aqueduct here out of this area towards another industrial area, this time a much happier looking industrial area, and if you take a sharp right here, you'll get to our next location. Factor meal delivery service. Just kidding. The next place is actually this pipe-themed highway, but I have to tell you about food for a second first. Our beloved meal delivery service Factor has returned to sponsor another Any Austin video, and instead of reading you the talking points they sent me, which I, basically never do anymore anyway, I'm just going to tell you why I use Factor, when I use Factor, when I don't use Factor, and why it might be helpful for you. No sales pitch. I mean, technically the whole thing's a sales pitch, I guess. If I'm having a busy week, or if I'm feeling lazy, having Factor in my fridge means I'll skip fewer meals and eat better food. It's really that simple. Being able to open my fridge and go, oh, I can be eating this salmon picante or this tofu thing in less than 5 minutes is really nice. It's helpful. I don't have to hem and haw about whether I feel like cooking. I don't have to try and figure out, what I have ingredients for. I just grab the thing, heat it up, eat it, and move on. And if I'm not busy or if I'm not feeling lazy, then I just pause the Factor subscription and make my own food. It's not that hard. You can just get it when you need it and pause it when you don't. It's a novel concept. I feel like the product kind of sells itself, to be honest, so I'm just going to say the bit that I have to say. Head to factor75.com or click the link below to use promo code, 50AnyAustin to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50AnyAustin at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Okay, let's talk about big green pipes. Anytime Mario games use classic Super Mario imagery to create large buildings in grounded worlds, I'm a fan. And this giant highway made of an old green pipe is a great example of that. The weirdest little place around here is underneath the overpass itself, which isn't that surprising since in real life going underneath overpasses is also a really good vibe. It actually kind of reminds me of those videos that I've seen of Super Nintendo World, how they have these giant, colorful, cartoon-looking structures that are really satisfying to look at, but you can tell that if you ever saw them when the park was shut down and it was quiet, it would be really unsettling. We tend not to design our freeways in real life with aesthetics like this in mind because it would add millions of dollars to the costs of building them, but there are some cool, smaller scale examples that I found. This large bicycle bridge in Iowa, yes, Iowa, is built with weird LED squares, so it looks like a video game when you go over it. Interstate 35W over the Mississippi in Minneapolis has lights on it that they can light up for holidays like Juneteenth, which just happened. And my favorite, this bridge in Seoul, South Korea with LED lights and fountains on it that make it look like real-life Rainbow Road. None of these are quite as elaborate as a huge green pipe, but they're still very neat. The pipe road has these large brace structures with the label Pipe Highway on them, which implies that this is part of a larger singular highway system. Following this highway south leads us to Crown City, where it intersects another highway, but the actual pipe highway aesthetic doesn't last that entire time. It just turns into a normal highway after a little bit. Rather than following the highway north, we're going to hop off into the river and take that upstream to our next location, which is just off the river to the west, a biome boundary. Biome boundaries in games are fascinating to me, and Nintendo games always provide great examples because they don't care as much about making the boundaries really smooth. You know, some games try to make it so that when you go from a grassy place to a snowy place, that it happens very gradually, but Nintendo games will just be like snow, grass, firm, hard line. There are exceptions to that, obviously, but I will always remember in Majora's Mask how clearly divided the world is and how cool I always thought it was that you could just walk 10 feet and go from, you know, the snowy area to a grassy field. Looking one way in this biome boundary, you can see the gray dust of the evil Bowser land, and then in the other direction is the lush green forests up near Acorn Heights. It's right here that I'm going to point out something for you that once I do, you will never be able to stop noticing it when you play Mario Kart World. Are you ready? The particle effects. Now, I'm not a game developer, so I don't know if that's actually what this is called, but notice how when you're up here near the gray mountain area, there are these tiny specks, maybe like ash or something, floating through the air. As soon as I cross from one side to the other, those gray specks change from gray to falling flower petals. This shift is delineated, at least as far as I can tell, by the biome colors on the map. So anytime you cross from one to another, the particle effect will shift. For example, if I'm near Dandelion Depths, you can see that the particle effects change to Dandelion Tufts. If I go to Cheep Cheep Falls, there's beautiful autumn leaves. Obviously, this helps sell the aesthetic of an area, but another cool thing that it does, and I would bet that this is mostly why they included them, is it helps with the sense of speed. As you know, if you can see particles whizzing by your cart as you drive, everything feels like it's going faster. This is part of why a lot of space games include little bits of doo-doo that fly through near the ship. You know, even though space is a vacuum with nothing in it, you'll still see like clouds and little things going by. This biome boundary illustrates that effect nicely, and it also showcases a really fun and artificial aesthetic effect, which is why I wanted to show it to you. We're going to cut south now and head for our first actual course on this journey, and it's one that's been in Mario Kart for nearly 30 years, Mumu Farm. I know, 30 years of Mumu Farm, holy Christ. The reason I want to stop at Mumu Farm is simple. Ever since I was as old as I was when I made that video about Mario Kart Wii's skyboxes, I've been obsessed with the idea of being able to break out of the boundaries of Mumu Meadows and explore the lonely hills of the surrounding countryside. Something about these hills always felt very nostalgic to me, possibly because it looked like the Windows XP default wallpaper. In Mario Kart World, when you're driving around the track in Mumu Meadows, it's easy to get into the same mindset you have when you were playing older games in the series. It's easy to look at those hills in the background as just some out-of-bounds place that you can't get to, but in Mario Kart World, no such boundaries exist. You can just go there. And you want to know what's funny? It's cool for a second, but it kind of turns out that most of the desire to go there is fueled by the fact that you can't. It's much more affecting to let your imagination go wild about what might be somewhere that you can't get to than it is to actually go there and see what's there. Just ask the people who landed on the moon. Sure, that's what they would say about that. Okay, it's not true of everything, but it is true of Mario Kart. Now, ironically, the very next place we're going to go is pretty much right here as well, because it's the tops of the Mumu Meadows Hills. If you take control of a UFO in Mario Kart World, which is something you can do, and fly it just south of Mario Circuit, when you exit the UFO, you'll be able to glide all the way down to the large, picturesque, capsule-shaped hills, and with a little precision, land on top of those hills for one of the most solitary experiences in the entire game. There are a few other surprising places like this you can get to with the UFO. Most of them are pretty similar, like this one. It's not quite fair to say that this is an out-of-bounds area because Mario Kart World doesn't really believe in inbounds or out-of-bounds in the traditional sense, but it's definitely not a place that the developers would have expected you to go. And yet, like we talked about with Cyberpunk, they still let you go there. There isn't anything there for us, it's kind of boring, but they didn't stop us. And that's a philosophy I really appreciate. Plus, it's just fun to go up high and watch the sunset from a surreal platform. See? Look. It's nice. Hopping down from these big hills, we're going to head further south, towards the castle at the center of the island, but the place we're going isn't the castle. It's right next to the castle. The moat. There's a bunch of really fun infrastructure around Peach's castle in this game, like these extremely normal Earth-looking doors, this parking lot with tiny cars but huge parking spots, and this huge decorative bridge, question mark? But my favorite spot among all of them is down here. Now, to be honest with you, one of the main reasons why this became my favorite place, well, technically my second favorite place on this list, but we'll get into my favorite place in a little bit. The reason this is my second favorite place is because I discovered that this is actually one of the places that the airplanes take off from before they fly around and drop item boxes for you. I have not figured out if the airplanes land anywhere yet. If I do, I'll let you know. But aside from that, obviously this place is just really weird. Huge tall walls, flat empty water, gigantic bridges. It's an unremarkable and odd spot at its finest, and I'm glad that they kept it accessible instead of just having Lakitu pick you up if you fell down here. Next up, we're heading southwest to the big city, and we're going to look at some urban design by heading to the bad neighborhood. One of the funniest things about watching 3D Mario games transition into the HD era has been watching them grapple with exactly how much detail to add to their cities. Too much and you become Grand Theft Auto. Too little and people complain that your game looks like an N64. For the most part, Nintendo strikes a good balance, but there are always funny little compromises that they have to make that end up feeling amusing if you think about them a little too hard, which of course is exactly what I do. So this course is called Crown City, and it's a city that's divided into two halves. There's the nice half of the city with the big LED signs and the clean streets and the Rosalina Tesla dealership, I guess is what it looks like. Car place, and then there's the not so nice half with the graffiti and the shuttered stores and the garbage everywhere. Now, I know as well as you do that it's not really this deep, but there is something really meta and amusing implied by this divide. Because if you think about it, there's really two possibilities within the lore of Mario Kart World. Either Crown City is a real city that people live and work in, and then people just occasionally race through the streets like Burnout Paradise, or Crown City is a racetrack that's just made to look like a real city, like Disneyland, which means this is either an actual poor people neighborhood with actual litter and actual graffiti, implying that there's poor people in Mario, or the architects of the track within the lore of the game created a fake version of a poor people neighborhood as set dressing, with fake garbage bags and fake graffiti, which is maybe equally funny. Now, the reality is that this is even more meta than that, because it was actually Nintendo developers trying to create a facsimile of a real city for a fictional racetrack using whatever imagery they could think of that feels like a city, which means this is kind of like a rainforest cafe or a Texas roadhouse, but for poor people neighborhoods. Pretty cool. Next, we're going from accidental environmental storytelling like this to intentional environmental storytelling by heading east across the long bridge of the bay. All the way underneath the eastern terminus of the bridge, you can find our next spot, Nabbit's informal housing area. This one doesn't need much explanation because it's really the only area that feels like we actually were meant to look at it. It's a little like a homeless encampment for Nabbit. He's got a fishing pole and a fire to keep warm. He's got some coolers and some money. I honestly think I only call it a homeless encampment because I was prejudiced as a kid by all those movies with the guys that warming their hands by a fire in a barrel. You know what I mean? So anytime I see one of those barrel fires, I just assume it's somebody who lives outside, which maybe Nabbit does, and that's fine. He needs a place to sleep, same as all of us. But you know, that's my bad. That's my prejudice coming through. Blame Annie. I watched Annie too much. There aren't that many little spots with environmental storytelling like this in Mario Kart World because this isn't really the point of the open world in this game. So the few that you can find that are like this are really fun. They're really neat to look at. Now the next quick little spot is just to the east of here, back up onto the shore and past the desert. The useless windmills. It's probably no surprise that these particular windmills don't show up on Mario Kart World's map because, you know, most things don't. They're quaint, they're idyllic, and another great example of the useless windmill trope in video games. I'm serious, no matter what game you're playing, take a look around. If you find a windmill in it, chances are it's not doing anything that a windmill is meant to do. It's just there as decoration. And that's true of these windmills as well. Nobody works in them, they aren't connected to anything, they don't stop spinning no matter what the wind is doing. It's just the game doing its best to virtue signal its rustic charm to the player, which to be fair is kind of what most art is. Now, despite not being connected to anything, there's actually firm evidence of what these mills are pretending to be used for. Does anyone know what kind of bags these are? That's right, these are 50-pound flour bags. And back in the olden times, we used windmills to mill grains down into flour. So this does make perfect sense. At least kind of. We're gonna cut all the way back north for this next spot, and it's a place that reminds me a whole lot of what I liked about Mario Kart 8, the background library. Mario Kart 8 was chock full of charming little background details and small areas that were just outside the access of the player, and Mario Kart World is too, but the difference is that in Mario Kart World, you can go there. It's a small place, and it's not exactly a secret, right? There's literally a Yoshi restaurant here with an item to collect. There's a pipe that you can go in, but the details are cute, and the effect of being able to pop back here is nice. I especially like the way that they chose to do books on the shelf. So many games choose to actually throw down three-dimensional books onto their bookshelves because, you know, computers are powerful enough now and game development tools are simple enough that placing a ton of individual books probably isn't that hard. But Nintendo didn't do this. They created a flat texture of book spines with no labels to sticker all over the flat bookshelves along the wall. Ironically, this less detailed approach was probably slightly more work than using stock 3D models of books since, you know, they have to make the texture from scratch. But it has the benefit of being less processor intensive as well as kind of cute. I don't know if it's actually more work or not. I'm not a game developer. I'm sure there'll be an answer in the comments from a game developer within the first hour of this video going up, so just look down below and, you know, you can figure it out. To get to our 12th location, go out the front of the library and take a left. Just down the hill, you'll find this magnificent place, the Ridge. And I'm not talking about Marcus Brownlee, you know what I'm saying? The Ridge is a thin wall of ice with a road on top of it that you can drive along to get from Starview Peak to DK Pass. And at first, it seems like it might be some kind of obstacle course. You know, maybe it is if you activate the right P-switch. But once you get past this big guy trying to blow you, there just really isn't anything. It's just a little strip of road hundreds of feet up in the sky. One of the best things about this spot is that it gives you a great view of the skyboxes in Mario Kart World, which are pretty notable in their own right. They kind of look like straight up photos of clouds, which is a cool contrast with the cartoon world, but they also don't move at all. I love skyboxes that don't move. They make me feel kind of funny and dreamy in a way that gets me instantly immersed in a space. If you wait up here long enough, you'll also be able to really clearly witness another quirk of Mario Kart World. The sun doesn't actually set. It just suddenly rapidly fades from one skybox to the next. God, I love this so much. Look at the moon. It just disappears. I didn't speed that up. That's actually how fast it happens. For your information, I decided to time the length of the day-night cycle in this game because I didn't see that info online anywhere yet, and here is what I found. Sunrise lasts for 2 minutes, the daytime lasts for 14 minutes, then sunset is also 2 minutes, and nighttime is 6 minutes. So daytime is by far the longest chunk of time. There's only one other game that I've played that does this really weird, fast transition from day to night, and funnily enough, it's Starfield, which is ironic because Starfield is also the only other game I've played that didn't really believe in the concept of out of bounds in this exact same way. Is Mario Kart World the Starfield of kart racers? Could be. Anyway, this little ice ridge is great. It's weird and it's fun to drive on because it ends in a big jump. Go do it. Now, we're going to go to my favorite spot on this list. To get there, we'll drive off the eastern edge of the ice ridge, tumble down the side of the mountain, and then head just a bit further east until we get to the nostalgic Candyland City. But we actually need to come here at night. Wow, look at that. So pretty. What we're looking at here is one of the racetracks, of course. It's called Sky High Sunday, but the actual course itself is up here, and what we're interested in is down here. These N64 looking trees, the empty space between them, and the total lack of movement from anything. This is a very magical place. Let's go take a closer look. The vibe of being down here at night is so compelling to me. This is one of the few locations in the game that I'm genuinely surprised that they let you go because it's so dead. Most places in this game are packed with little bits of movement, you know, like grass in the wind or spinning fan blades or LED screens playing advertisements. But down here, nothing. It feels like breaking into a prop house for a production of the Nutcracker After Hours and then finding out that someone forgot to unplug all of the light up set pieces. Really weird energy. Normally in Mario Kart, you're racing by everything so quickly that it doesn't really register what you're looking at other than just the vague aesthetics. But in this game, we're allowed to sit and look at it. And it's sort of encouraged to, actually, which I really appreciate. I think that's cool. We can't hang out down here forever, though. Unfortunately, we have to head south to take a look at just 2 more spots on this journey before we say goodbye. Maybe 3 if you're good, but We'll see. South of the snow area, we find ourselves passing through Wario Shipyard and into the tropical bay near Peach Beach, which is a big resort. And all over this bay, you can find our next stop, free boat rides. It's not a huge deal, I know, but there are all of these boats driving around the water here that you can typically use to get speed boosts or do tricks while roaming around. And if you approach the boats just right, being careful to avoid the very speed boost that gives the boats purpose in the game, you can sneak up onto the front of the boat and ride them around. There's not really a ton to this other than just it lets you look at a very GameCube-esque model of a boat, but I think it's neat to just sneak into this little place and watch what happens. One of the only interesting things I noticed here is that if the boats, they seem to sort of go mostly on a set path, but every so often they would almost collide with another boat and then sort of have to slow down or turn out of the way, which is kind of interesting because if the paths for these boats were truly predetermined, you'd think this wouldn't happen, which almost implies that maybe each boat kind of has its own free will. You'll have to talk to that little fish who made the video following all the cars around if you want a better answer to that one. I'm busy showing you a bunch of random shit, okay? But I'm sure he can do it. Hey, fish, make a video about the boats. Before I show you my final spot, I want to take just a moment to look back at all the places we've visited so far, from all the way back at the industrial hub with the broken bridge, to the beautiful summit of the hills around Mumu Meadows, up to the library in the mountains, and down to the surreal neon candy liminal space. The thing about places like this is that they aren't remarkable, at least for the most part. There's the old joke on this channel that I make videos about unremarkable places, but then I spend 20 minutes remarking on them, and that is funny, and it is true here as well. But it's important to me to point out that the interest we've shown in these places isn't because of their utility to us, and it's not even because of their cool vibes. Some of them aren't even that cool looking. But for each place today, we made a choice to find it interesting, and by making that choice, we found things that made them interesting. That's a real thing you can do in your life. You can take a minute, pay close attention, and just listen to what interesting things your brain starts to observe about the places you are, the games you play, the people you meet, and anything else you do. Just kind of wanted you to know that that was an option, and that's kind of why I like making these videos. Anyway, let's wrap this up, shall we? If you ride that GameCube boat all the way down to the southernmost point of its route near the sand bridge that leads to the resort, you can hop off and drive south along the shoreline until you reach this big cliff. You take a right and then... Actually, I'm not going to tell you how to get to this point. I'm just going to show it to you. The southeast edge. We're gazing off into the Eastern Ocean now, looking out in the opposite direction that we were all the way back at the beginning of this video. But the thing that makes this spot slightly different than the one from back then is just how secluded it is. It's not hard to get here by any means, but it's definitely a little more out of the way than a lot of the places that we've looked at so far. And that's partially evidenced by the fact that if you go even 10 more feet in this direction, Cowman picks you up and takes you all the way back to the beach. He actually sets you right in front of a bunch of Goombas that then try to kill you, which is kind of rude, but you know, there you go. We're really on the edge of nowhere here. I love that we can see the resort, especially at night. The lighting is really lovely, and it's cool to realize every single thing we've looked at today is somewhere between this point on the eastern edge of the island and this point on the western edge of the island. But more than anything, I just like this spot because it's empty. Mario Kart is a super stimulating game series, and one of the things that I think was holding it back in the past was its lack of pacing. It was always just go, go, go. So as soon as you got your fill of that, then there was nothing really to do but turn it off. By introducing a big open world that's a little bit more boring, it gives Mario Kart World the chance to breathe, which gives the races themselves a much more vibrant memory, and ultimately makes the game the best Mario Kart game of all time, aside from maybe Super Circuit. But that's purely because of that song from Sky Garden. Seriously, go listen to that song. It bangs. It's so good. I'm Annie Austin. Thanks for watching.